goodness. Now, it's world premiere time. You gotta do it exactly. They said that the kids were fast as lightning. It will all make sense soon. Very soon. Well, we have another story to share. It's a current event. And wouldn't you know, the individual that I'm speaking about in regards to really, in essence, over a decade ago now, it's hard to believe, pioneered the format of podcasting. Nobody really thought that anybody would want to sit and listen to another person interview some newsmaker or entertainer. No. Joe Rogan was a visionary in that frontier. Started off his podcast in his little home. You know, the kid from Newark, New Jersey. We're going to go to Newark and talk about how to repair the nation soon. We're going to continue our Repair the Nation, Reparations Now rallies. But we wanted to address this, what can you call it? Because it's hard to say it's a new phenomenon when it's old and ancient. It's so old that people don't even know how old it is. For reference, the first usage of this offensive terminology was in 1755. You heard me correct. 1755 was the first time that the N-word was notated as being used in a derogatory, contemptuous, and offensive way towards one group of human beings who happen to be dark skinned on this planet. Now, apparently, Joe Rogan, the great American podcaster, the man who exemplifies masculinity, and we'll circle back around to that, because that's going to be important too. He found himself in a little bit of hot water lately. Because, well, words apparently have meanings. And what you share, whether you're a comedian, a politician, a celebrity, fashion designer, it carries weight. Now, if you're not an American or you're not familiar with Western society, I would tell you the first thing that you have to brush up on, the most crucial thing that you have to become aware of in Western society, is that people, darn near everybody in Western society, loathes one thing above all else. It's hated with a passion. It's called accountability. In the East, oh, you take accountability. It's done overboard in the East. Famous generals are known to have been losing battles, taken out their sword in Japan and fallen on it because they said that if they were to return back to their province, their home, they would be shamed. They would feel it, even if nobody said it. It would just be a sense of shame. In the West, shame for improper and poor behavior. Why, you must be crazy. I was just simply having a bad Monday. That's why I went into the store and started screaming and using racial epithets. Oh, it was a tablet that I took. I hadn't been getting very much sleep. So that's why I was able to use racial epithets. Oh, well, I was presenting an educational format, and the context was I was comparing it to something else. That's why I was able to use a racial epithet. There's no such thing as shame or feeling shame for large chunks of individuals in the West for any type of behavior that they might display. We started seeing this, and it became so prevalent, so viral, that it took on a life and a name of its own. Have you heard or seen these Karens in public? Do you think they feel any shame in regards to their behavior? I can guarantee you they don't. They were having a rough day. It was a mental health episode. They suffer from depression and anxiety. It's always some bullshit ass excuse. It's never any accountability. That's been the story of this entire nation. Even before it was a nation. When they settled and genocided 55 million out of 60 million indigenous people. You think there was any accountability for that shit? Oh no. No. Not to this day there hasn't been any accountability. I know you'll talk about the dolls' rolls. I know. But that shit is bullshit too. You know that I know that too. No. There's never any accountability. And the home of the crowd who takes no accountability for their action in Western civilization, wouldn't you know, happens to be the United States of America. They're 50-50. They don't take accountability as much as they should for the shit that they do. But at least they'll broach the topic. In America, we circle the bandwagons. We definitely have each other's six. We're patriots. The only problem is we don't like other people who are Americans too. And so one group just deems themselves patriotic. And everybody else is the villain, the devil, evil, They must be vanquished. They're not citizens, you see. Now, if you have this mentality or framework as your operating principle that you're starting from, you can see why you might be able to justify feeling that you're the one being persecuted. You're the one where there's a witch hunt that's occurring. Now let's stop and examine this before we really get into the crux of the matter. You have Joe Rogan, who gave a fake apology, in my opinion. For once, me and Donald Trump agree he should stop apologizing. I agree with this. Never apologize for things that you don't feel sorry for. I watched that. Joe Rogan doesn't feel any apology for what he did. He tried to justify it during the apology. Here's a lesson, kids. If you really are regretful of something that you do, you just sincerely apologize. You don't try to blend in and make excuses and say that you did it for this reason or that reason, or that you didn't know. Does anybody really expect me to believe that a 54-year-old grown-ass man in the United States of America 10 years ago didn't know that using the N-word was not appropriate? And not just once using it, on 70 various occasions using that word in public. Now you go tomorrow to your job and you use racial epithets in front of your coworkers. See how long you have a job. Everybody is like, I want my freedom and my liberty. You can have your freedom and liberty. You can say whatever you want to say. But there's going to be consequences. See, that's the issue. You have a group of people who've never been held accountable for any of their actions. And now that they're starting to feel some accountability for their poor behavior, they're whining and screaming and using freedom as a crutch for really what it is, not being allowed to perform and commit debauchery and brutality and terror to people simply that they don't like. Joe Rogan said that there's a lesson to be learned in this whole thing. I agree. The lesson is don't give fake apologies, Joe. It was so fake. Oh, I've learned now that I can't say the N-word. Like, really? You're telling me that a grown man, a 44-year-old grown white man who was born in Newark, New Jersey, who lived in Los Angeles, California, who got his start, his career in Boston, Massachusetts. You're telling me in 3 of the biggest metropolitan cities, when you were born in the United States of America, and you never learned from 0 to 44 years of age that you couldn't use the N-word, a racial epithet, repeatedly in public. You're telling me that in 2022 you finally came to that conclusion and realization. Okay, if that's the case, why didn't you share that in your apology? You notice how in these apologies you can tell when they're fake. One clear giveaway. People are like, how do you do an apology? How do you do an apology? It's simple. If you're really apologetic, you'll share why you're apologizing. I didn't hear anything as to why he really apologized. Besides, he was exposed as being a racist. See, you only need to come out and give a fake apology when you were exposed. He said there's a compilation of videos that I did, and I've been a podcaster for decades. Okay, that's true. There's a compilation of videos where you use the N-word for decades. What do you want us to do about that? You want us to feel bad for you? You're the one that did it. And now you're saying it's a witch hunt. You know how you can avoid witch hunts? This is a good note for everybody that's thinking about avoiding a witch hunt in 2022. You can actually avoid a witch hunt by not using the N-word. Oh my goodness. That's brilliant. I had never thought about that. You mean they can't come for me and hunt me if I don't use the N-word? Oh my goodness. Thank you so kindly for this advice. You're a lifesaver, Purple People's Owl. What would we do without you? I don't know. You can tip me. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. But it's practical if you're an American that you do these kind of things. Because, well, you're not trying to actually apologize to the people you offended. No. Before they used to say, I apologize if I offended anyone. You notice they don't say that anymore. Because it's evident if you're apologizing, you've certainly offended somebody. So they don't say that anymore. They just say it looks really bad. And I'm not what it clearly shows me to be. He said, I'm not a racist. I don't know. None of us are around Joe Rogan 24/7 to know whether he is or isn't a racist. And is that really the point? People always say what they're not. They want to tell you, don't believe your eyes. Don't believe your ears. Believe what's coming out of my mouth at this point in time, when I've been exposed for being what I truly am. Don't you find that a little bit odd too? He says, I'm not a racist. We wouldn't have any way or context, Joe, to know that. What we do have a way and context to know is that you use a racial epithet 70 times. And then there was the commentary about apes. You gotta brace yourself for this one. Because, well, at the time, after Joe Rogan made that comment, which wasn't a joke, there's nothing funny about the deep, dark history of white European colonizers comparing African Americans and dark-skinned human beings to apes, monkeys, and animals. There's nothing funny about that. So the only people that would laugh about that are people that agree that it's a legitimate thing to do. He says, looking back on that, I now realize that it was insensitive. But Joe, the clip that they have of you when you're saying that racist shit, As soon as you uttered it, you said it was racist. So you knew when you were saying it that it was racist. And you said, it certainly looks like I'm comparing African Americans to apes. But in the clip, that's exactly what you did. You said you stepped out and there were no white people. It was all black people, like Planet of the Apes. That's a direct comparison. You took out all the people that you didn't want to compare to apes. You get how this doesn't make any sense if you're sitting there and you're a logical, critical thinker, listening to a fake-ass bullshit apology from a bullshitter? That's why I agree with Trump for once. The lunatic from Mar-a-Lago is correct. Don't apologize if you don't really feel regretful. Now, he says I haven't used the word publicly in decades now. I don't know. Should we give people who don't use racial epithets in public a gold medal? Maybe a silver medal. I don't know, maybe a bronze. Should we throw a ticker tape parade for people who don't use racial epithets in 2022 in public? Should we throw parades and gather the whole community and give you a clap and a pat on the back? I mean, the stuff that people want accolades for nowadays, it's not even bare minimum shit in America. It's common decent standards to normal decent human beings. What should we do? I don't know. Joe, you will have to tell us. What do you want us to do? What prize do you want? You haven't used a racial epithet. It's like somebody telling you, I've been drug-free, alcohol-free for a decade. That's something actually to give somebody a pat on the back about. They had an addiction to something. And they fought the demons internally. They took accountability. And they didn't do it anymore. Joe Rogan wants you to give him a pat on the back for not using a racial epithet that we as a general society have known is a racial epithet since 1755 on this planet. Fuck out of here with that bullshit. But that's America for you in a nutshell. It's not even the bare minimum. It's below subpar. But always congratulate me. And then, you gotta find a way to turn it around. To say it's not really your fault. You're the one being persecuted by some insidious, hidden, shadowy figure. You notice it's always some shadowy figure. It's always some cabal, some dark creature. I won't speculate if that in essence is being racist. I'll just let you be the judge of the terminology that they use based off of the legacy of this nation's past, present, and what looks like maybe possibly future instances of atrocities towards people of color. Substandard shit. Round of applause. I haven't used it in a long time. And most of us can agree that no white person should ever be able to use that word. He said most of us. As though, I caught that, as though there are some people who do think it should be justified. but they're probably the fringe. You know, they're the ones that would go to a lynching. We don't want to associate ourselves with them. They're too crazy. So most of us can agree that it's offensive, and no white person should use it. Well, slow down there, buddy. It's not just white people that shouldn't use it. Nobody should use a racial epithet. What numbskull part of this don't people understand? Nobody should use a racial epithet, let alone that one. But this whole notion that, well, it was a learning curve for me, because people in the African American community have used it before in the past. And well, they can use it, but then I can't. It was a mental gymnastic twist. It was just something hard for me to wrap my brain around. And so now that I got my brain wrapped around it in 2022, I realized that I can't do it anymore. Now, let's examine this kind of bullshit, because that's exactly what it is. Bullshit. You remember that there was groups of conservatives when hip-hop, rap first came out over the airwaves. Concerned Parents of America, Focus on the Family. All of these groups of conservative white evangelical people in this country complained about the degeneracy, that was the word they chose to use, the degeneracy of the entertainment and music and culture of the African American community. They complained about certain lyrics, rap lyrics. They complained about the misogyny and the use of the N-word. So wait a minute, if conservatives knew when hip-hop first came out in the 80s and 90s that it was degeneracy, then why did you think when you started a podcast decades later that it would be okay to use it? See, something's not adding up with me. There's something off. And I'm going to tell you what it is. Because you should know. You should know how deeply unwell people are that think they're doing well. You know, that's a sign of the times. When you're sick and you don't even know that you're sick. I think they call it asymptomatic right now, nowadays. I'm going to tell you why there's the folks always in the back that clamor and ask, well, if that person can say it, why can't I? When is it ever okay for a white person to use the N-word? It's like, firstly, when I hear that question, my first thought is, wait a minute. Let me put on my psychotherapy analysis here. Why are you asking that question in the first place? Why is it important for you to want to use a racial slur? And a racial slur that your ethnicity, the white community, created to disenfranchise and completely dehumanize another group of human beings. Why would you really want to know when would that be okay for you to begin utilizing again? Nobody ever asks that question. You know why? Because then you would have to get to the root cause. You know, when they remove a root canal in your mouth, it's very, very painful. The roots of the tree, they run deep under the land. What's the root of this question, this inquiry? When can I use the N word? Why do you want to? The simple reason people has and want to use it is because they know what it is. They know the potency behind it. That's the only reason you would ask. Now you say the potency. You're thinking, what do you mean by potency? Well, we said if it was used to dehumanize a whole entire group, there was a use case for it. You see, that's what people forget. Words have meanings because there's a use case for them. I find it funny that conservatives argue nonstop that the left is trying to change language, trying to expand and redefine what language means. There's binary, there's man and woman. There's no such thing as transgender. The left is insane. They've lost their mind. They want you to refer to people with pronouns. They, them, she, her, he, him, Z. These would be the same individuals that get riled up about the linguistics of the English language and defending the meanings and definitions of standard Western society. But then will tell you when they use a racial epithet, words absolutely have no meaning. It's just another word in the English language. I didn't know the potency of it. You see how they send mixed messages? Or they want to have it both ways? When it comes to offending, subjugating, and oppressing, they want to be able to use the English language. When it comes to expanding, being inclusive, showing diversity, they want to restrict the English language. That's modern conservatism for you. Steeped, knee deep in intolerance. Joe, you knew the N-word. You couldn't use it. Don't pretend you didn't. You know, a lot of people in Europe and in America, they know about the comparison of African Americans. The 3/5 calling African Americans non-humans, calling them monkeys and primates and apes. But Joe Rogan, he was clueless about this. He made commentary about it, but he didn't really know the history of it. That's what he wants us to believe. And maybe that's true. Maybe people don't know the history. So here's a short little refresher course for those that, well, everything is CRT, so perhaps this is critical race theory, because it does have to do with race. And it was a scientific theory. So maybe it's critical that you know this. It fits the bill. It's CRT for sure. You know, the New York Zoological Society had human zoos. You didn't know this, did you? There were human zoos. Just like there's animal zoos, which shouldn't be a thing either. Because a zoo is really a prison. That's why people are for abolishing zoos, too. But there were human zoos in New York, run by the New York Zoological Society. A prestigious group of esteemed, educated, Anglo-Saxon men in suits and ties, bow ties, very wealthy, and New Yorkers. They used to go to the zoo to see humans on display. Little kids, babies. Now these humans were, of course, dark-skinned. They were black. They were African Americans. And people would say they were petting zoos because you would go up to the kids and the humans. You would tug on their hair. You would pour stuff on them. You would abuse and torture them. That's American history, right in New York. It's European history. In Germany, it went until 1945, where black people were abused by European Germans in human zoos. In New York, they petitioned the mayor. They said, "Mayor, you can't go for this." And the mayor didn't even respond. Can you imagine that now, to have a human child in a cage holding a monkey? That happened in your country, the United States of America. Look it up. It's called a human zoo. Joe Rogan, I'm sure Joe didn't know. And maybe therein lies the problem. People are so clueless and ignorant of shit that's already occurred that was atrocious and horrible and horrendous, that took a lot of effort to get rid of, that now they're so cavalier about it that they feel as though they can make jokes. We're so beyond it that we can make jokes about it. Well, the reason I'm going on a Repair the Fucking Nation tour, let me be frank here, is because we haven't done doodly squat. Absolutely nothing for marginalized and oppressed communities of color in this country. I think they call it BIPOC now. Black, Indigenous People of Color. Still the lowest paid workers. Still the individuals that have the most health risks. Still the individuals impacted the most by environmental and structural racism. Still the individuals impacted the most by the criminal justice system. Still the individuals impacted by poverty. But we're so beyond our racism nowadays that we can make jokes about the past. Because we're all doing well. We're all on the same level playing field. You know, perhaps, and I won't even venture to go into this, but perhaps it would be more of an acceptable baseline if everybody was doing kumbaya in this country and everybody was feeling happy and joyous and prosperity was across the land and people were being treated equally as Americans. Perhaps then it would be nice to share a joke or a laugh about the deep-seated ignorance of the past. Americans are acting like they're so far removed from the toxicity of slavery when you still have public lynchings like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Amir Locke, Oscar Grant, Freddie Gray, Like, fuck out of here. They want to use that word. Certain people want to use that word because it's deeply rooted inside of them, the racism. They don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to take any accountability for that. That prejudice, that bigotry, that hatred still finds vestiges in their heart. And you know, there's nobody, nothing that's going to come along and save them. People have to save themselves. There's no magic fairy dust. No magic creature. None of that shit. People have to do the work themselves. Joe Rogan. Do I know whether he wants to do the work himself or not? I don't know and don't care. I don't listen to what Joe Rogan has to say. So all these people saying, oh, you want to counsel Joe Rogan. That would be like if I cared about what the individual was saying. I give two fucks because I never listened to Joe Rogan. The only reason I'm giving commentary on this is because he used a racial epithet. He diminished an entire group of human beings. And then, well, he came out and gave a fake-ass apology. Now, if he had given a sincere apology, without all of the context bullshit, because what context is necessary to use a racial epithet? Please, for all of these individuals that are saying, oh, but the context, but the context, but the context, but the context. What is the context to ever use a racial slur? To ever purposely offend someone and then not give a general apology, but talk about context. Seems odd that in an apology, you would want to bring up context. If I'm apologizing for something I did, I'm just going to say, I'm sorry I did it. Here's what I've learned moving forward. Here's why I shouldn't have done it. Here's what I'm working to address internally about myself and fix. And it was authenticated that it was a fake apology by what he said not 72 hours after the apology. It hasn't even been 72 hours. I think maybe just barely 72. And now it's a witch hunt. They want to silence me. They're trying to counsel me. Oh my goodness. Come now. They're trying to counsel Joe Rogan. They're going after Joe Rogan. It's a witch hunt. And you know who's got his back, right? All of the men. The manospheres got this locked down. The men got you, Joe. They know. You can't come for Joe Rogan. He's a man. And that's what we need more of in America. We need men to stand up and say something. And just be proud that they said it. We have to reclaim America. Do you understand now why I say that it's toxic masculinity? And there's no accountability? Oh, it happened so long ago. Really interesting. So there's an expiration date for racism. You know, these are some interesting excuses. I'm sure that rapists can say that too. You know, I raped somebody 10 years ago. I learned from it. I now don't rape anymore. It's called statute of limitations. For certain crimes, there's no statute of limitation. You can't say, oh, I murdered somebody 30 years ago. What I learned now, murder is bad. This This is literally what they're trying to say. Being a racist, 10 years ago, it's okay. But now I learn I can't be a racist now. But they never tell you why that's the case. Well, they couldn't be a racist back then, but they were allowed to do it. And that's the story of America. Men, in large part, have been allowed to be racist, misogynist, bigots, violent. They've been allowed because they've never had to take any accountability. And now here it is, Johnny, in the classroom. We all know Johnny. Now when you finally put your foot down and tell Johnny, sit down, Johnny starts crying and whining. And now you're distracted. Johnny's tears and sobs are melting away at your heart. You feel bad for having punished Johnny. You no longer remember that Johnny was up biting people in the classroom. Johnny was sticking people in the head with pencils. Johnny was spitting on other children. Now it's all about Johnny's tears and how Johnny feels. And now you have to tell Johnny, Johnny, you know the reason why you're being punished is because you did all of these things. And Johnny is going to respond, you're just being mean to me. You're picking on me. Johnny is persecuted. In Johnny's mind, he's a perpetually persecuted individual. You have to understand that there are individuals, men, online, who sit around and all they do is whine. They're being persecuted because women have jobs. They're being persecuted because they can't grab a woman and slap her on her behind. They're being persecuted because they can't yell and scream at women on the street. They're being persecuted because they can't use racial epithets. They're being persecuted because they can't go to a party and slip date rape drugs into drinks and rape you. They're being persecuted because they can't take you behind a dumpster and rape you. That's persecution, don't you know? They're losing their freedom and liberty. They're not being allowed to be men. Somehow, barbarianism, debauchery, is the definition of masculinity. And then when you call out evidence and examples of this, and you call it what it is, toxic, you're a radical. You're a feminist. You hate men. You hate boys. You won't allow them to just be what they are. It sounds like you want us to allow you to just be a savage. It sounds like you just want us to allow you to just cause anarchy. But these will be the same people that say they're for law and order. Really? Have you seen the shit they're doing in Canada? That's the Joe Rogan Experience listeners. Those Ottawa truckers. That's them. That's the men. That's the man. That's the alpha dog. That's all that shit that they sit around talking about online. Driving the wrong way on the street, putting pedestrians in harm's way. Openly drinking and driving. Using racial slurs and fighting people. But they call it a freedom convoy. You see, their freedom relies on your oppression. They're not free until they're able to dehumanize another group of people on this planet. And they don't want to have to apologize for that. They're tired of apologizing for being what they are. No accountability. You know the type. The sour cream brigade. I call them the sour cream brigade. Hopefully one day they'll take compilation snippets of me defining who these scumbags are. And they'll say, the purple people's owl used the sour cream brigade. Let me go and check. In 2022, was that a racial epithet? No, it's a noun and a verb. It's what they are and what they do. Everything has to be about them. They're the perpetually persecuted people. It's never about the persecution that they're doing to others. Their actions. No, Johnny is sad and crying because now he's being held accountable. There was a January 6th insurrectionist who was out on bail. You listen to what I'm saying. He was out on bail for attempted murder. And instead of being grateful to be out on bail for an attempted murder, this young, talented, and gifted Reclaim America citizen decided he wanted to storm the Capitol and assault police officers, defecate in the United States Capitol building. He says he's being persecuted because they revoked his bail. Of course. You've got a whole generation of them. I call them the incel Nazis. They hate women, especially black women. Their passion and hatred towards women is unrivaled. But then you read and listen to what they say, and you quickly figure out there's a reason why nobody would like you. You know, some people just have to accept the fact that they're unlikable. And it's not because of how they look or who they are, but it's because of their behavior that they display every day through their actions. You know, Joe, they used to say, and I still think they do, that actions speak louder than words. We'll soon all find out if he's truly apologetic. I don't think so. He's already saying it's a witch hunt. The witches are out for him. And you know that's sexist too. Because the individuals who they used to say are witches were all feminists. Whether they were men, women, two-spirit, non-binary. And they were all being controlled by a dark, shadowy figure. Satan, Lucifer, Jezebel. All this stupid bullshit. It's always some little magical creature, some stupid shit. When all we ever see is the words coming out of their mouth. I wish they would sit this creature down who they blame for everything I wish they would sit this creature down and show us this magical creature that makes them do this. Because I happen to know who the creature is. It's the person we see. It's them.